Kız yigit xurlanğan, ayaq astı qılınğan, ezilgan şu xalqımning qo'llarini suygim bor mening. Feryadim osmon falak to'kilgachga qon selda, ejderhanın ağzıdım, vatanımni algım bor mening. Afg'on Uyg'urman, vatan qoldim hargiz ketmagay. Ay yıldız ayrılığım, gökyüzüne pürgün bor mening.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to a special episode of Talkies Turkestan. I have with me here today former NBA player, author, MMA fighter, political activist Royce White here with me to talk about Free the Uyghurs. Welcome, Royce. How are you today?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Thank you so much. I wanted to get in touch with you in such a long time because I noticed you were one of the first sports players out there, calling for freeing the Uyghurs at a time when no one else would. And I'm so glad that we connected today.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the time for sure. Thank you.
So just to start off today, I want to talk about your involvement. Why you decided to talk about freeing the Uyghurs, because we know that China has so much influence sports in general in China, but especially in sports like basketball and the NBA.
Well, it's yet to be seen what the ramifications will be on my athletic career for talking about the CCP and the treatment of the Uyghurs. But I come from the background of being blackballed by the NBA anyway, right? So to me, speaking out about an injustice against a people a world away isn't that scary, because I've already felt the wrath of the establishment and this sort of global corporate community that continues to protect the interests of the CCP and carry water for the CCP. So this past summer, the clip went viral of me wearing the T-shirt that said "Free the Uyghurs" with the backwards swoosh on it. But I originally started talking about the concentration camps back in 2018-19. So
where what we've obviously seen you on talking about other issues, whether it be COVID and other issues out there.
Mhm.
Where do you see this going? We see China's influence in sports. Why won't, especially we saw some comments the other week by Golden State Warriors owner Chamath Palihapitiya. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Where's this heading to?
Well, I think we're heading into a time of great international conflict. And I don't think that the international conflict is going to necessarily be between nation states. I think that there's a very concerted effort and a sort of collaboration between nation states, powerful nation states, to move our society in a particular direction. And in my opinion, towards artificial intelligence driven, automation driven, one government, one currency type of society. But the conflict is going to be civil between free people and the state and governments around the world. And, that broke out in Hong Kong already. It broke out in America during the George Floyd uprising. It broke out during the election of the current president here in the United States. And it's broken out across Europe, right? Right now it's breaking out in Canada in relation to the vaccine mandates. So I think you'll see that continue to progress into a place where some civilians will have success in taking back control of their nations and of their own individual agency and rights and citizenship. And in some places, a tyrannical government or tyrannical state will run roughshod over the people there, and there'll be massive slaughters like we've never seen.
I'm sure you've seen, sports stars, athletes are unlikely to speak out in any sort of sport.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have connections with other athletes and especially basketball players. Even though they're not speaking up, do they talk to you about it? Are they concerned? Do they want to do something? What's holding them back?
Well, that was kind of the intuition for me to talk about the issue in such a theatrical way, right? I had the shirt. I kind of hijacked a post-game interview. For the rest of the season, I would write "Free the Uyghurs" on the side of my head in Sharpie. And I think for the most part, a lot of athletes don't know what's taking place there in China as it pertains to the Uyghurs. Most of the times I get questions of, well, who are the Uyghurs, or what does that mean on the side of your head? So that tells me that the mainstream establishment and media and this sort of global cooperation has done a good job to keep the Uyghurs genocide not undercover, but certainly not a central theme of any mainstream institution. So I hear a lot of athletes that really don't understand what's taking place. Some of them are interested, but the reality is that athletes by and large have been conditioned in a culture of corporate interests where they are prone to look away from the tough conversation and opt for whatever humanitarian effort has been, let's say, supported or in some cases subsidized by the establishment, right? And that's the bigger issue with the athletes. I think many of them may not know what's going on, but they're not looking either. And because if you looked for even half a second, you'll be able to find out what's taking place with the Uyghurs and how wrong it is. So.
Are there any further plans to sort of broaden your campaign, whether it be for Uyghurs or other people? What are we seeing anything in the pipeline, so to speak?
Yeah, we have some plans, but we like to be we like surprise attacks. I'll say that. I was fortunate enough to be in a position this past season in the Big Three, which is a league that Ice Cube started, where I had the support of that league and being able to be myself and talk about the things that I wanted to talk about. I was very fortunate to be able to score the winning basket in the game that day and just have a live CBS interview after that game. And CBS allowed me to say it. They didn't cut it. And they never came to me afterward and said, "Hey, we don't want you to talk about that anymore." So I think we do have some allies out there. I think there are people around the world at every level of society who have a problem with injustice, especially one as blatant as the Uyghur genocide. And we'll continue to try and find those allies and team up and collaborate with them to get this message out to the broadest audience possible.
As I mentioned to you before, Talkies Turkestan is the largest channel in the Uyghur language talking about the Uyghurs' plight. What would your final message to the Uyghurs be? Obviously, we don't broadcast into East Turkestan. That would be impossible.
Yeah.
But the Uyghurs on the outside who are going through this strife of having their missing family members in the camps, not being able to contact them, what would your message be to them?
My message would be, my prayers and thoughts are with them. What has taken place to them is not a reflection of who they are, of their spirit, of anything that they've done wrong. What the CCP has tried to do is go after a vulnerable population to send a message and to test where the rest of the world is when it comes to freedom and justice. And it saddens me that the Uyghurs have to be the object of that tyranny at this point in time, that the CCP is allowed to do what they are without the world responding properly. If I had more power and more control over what America's role is in the world, I would say that we should sever ties with China completely, economically and in trade until they release the Uyghurs from the concentration camps. But I don't even think that the tyranny and the persecution would stop if the Uyghurs were no longer in the camps, right? And we have to prepare ourselves for the reality that tyrannical governments are going to become more tyrannical. And we have to ask ourselves, and this is something that we here in America, as Black people here in America, or as free people here in America, people of all races who are facing a similar attitude from government, not to the same extent, obviously, of actually forcibly taking us and putting us in concentration camps against our will, but a government that wants to exert more and more tyrannical rule and impede on freedom and rights. I tell people in America the same thing. We have to decide what we're prepared to lose in the interest of freedom. And as Malcolm X once said, the price of freedom is death. And so that's something that we have to come to grips with, that ultimately it's better to live free than die in chains.
Thank you so much for joining us, Royce White. Is there any last words before I close out the show that you've got?
Godspeed.
Thank you so much. I'm going to close out the show, but I'm going to say my own goodbye afterwards, just with the credits, and I'll see you after this. Thank you so much. Until next time, brothers and sisters, peace be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ümit üzme aziz halqim, ümit üzme ey ana yurt. Biz atlandık bu güreşke, o yıl taştek uyuşup. Allah verse bu nusretni, bizgilerimiz hepsi